All right. Can everyone online hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right. We're gonna go ahead and get started, everyone. So welcome to April's LEPC meeting. My name is Lauren Chilton. I'm a facilitator or planner for these meetings. I'm an emergency management specialist, OEM. For those of you who are new to these meetings, the purpose of them is to enhance our county's preparedness response to emergencies or incidents by involving government, private business, nonprofit organizations, and citizens in planning and preparing for such an incident. I also want to note that April is National Financial Capability Month, so this will be the theme of our meeting today, and we are very glad that y'all are here. So I'll ask everyone real quick that if you are attending in person, if you haven't already, maybe just on your way out, you could sign in. There's a little piece of paper on that table back there. There's also a lot of goodies back there for y'all to take with y'all that our speaker today, Joy, brought. And also, if you're joining online, if you could type your name and your organization into the chat, that way we can make sure that we keep track of our attendance. If you are just joining as a resident today, you can just ensure that you're a Howard County resident. Now I'd like to introduce Battalion Chief Stephen Hardesty to present the spill report for this past quarter.
Good afternoon. During the last quarter, we had 16 hazmat response incidents. One of them involved leaking home heating oil from a delivery truck here in LEPC City that resulted in a 140-gallon leak on the driveway of the residence. 22-gallon latex paint spill as a result of a motor vehicle accident in Columbia. We had a propane leak in Clarksville. Farm tractor ran over top the propane in the ground propane tank housing, and we ended up burning off about 900 gallons of propane. 211 gallons of diesel fuel spilled into the environment from 11 different accidents on I-95, Route 70 and Route 32. During those incidents, we were able to successfully remove 411 gallons of fuel from the leaking tanks, preventing them from environmental damage. So nothing big or exciting, but the normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Real quick, I'll go into some updates for our office. Oops. There you go. So OEM, we had a successful full-scale exercise of the Ellicott City Outdoor Tone Alert System back in February. The date for our next test hasn't been quite finalized yet, but these notifications always go through our social media and also Howard County Government's main social pages. We also completed our hazard identification and risk analysis, which covers the next 3 years, and it's been posted to our website. And this information will be incorporated into our next edition of our community hazard handbook, which we print, hand out to the public, and also it goes online. And this handbook is really useful for just getting a quick snapshot of all the natural hazards and also human caused hazards that could occur. So it's a great little booklet to either keep bookmarked on your computer or have a copy of. We also just submitted our countywide natural hazard mitigation plan to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management for their review. This plan discusses threats and hazards that face our area, as well as the steps that the county is taking to mitigate those concerns. So once MDEM finishes their review, it will then go to FEMA for their review as well. And then following their review, they'll ask us to make any revisions that they would like, and then the whole plan will go to our county council for their final review and approval. Next, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Ms. Joy Hatchette, and tell you a little bit about her background. Joy currently serves as the Associate Commissioner for Consumer Education and Advocacy Unit at the Maryland Insurance Administration. Joy is responsible for overseeing outreach to Maryland consumers so they can better understand their rights and obligations under their insurance policies. She served as Associate Commissioner for Consumer Complaints at the MIA from September of '97 until July of 2004. From 1993 until '97, she served as an Assistant Attorney General for the MIA. And in 2016, she was appointed by Governor Larry Hogan to the Maryland Commission on Aging. And as a member of this commission, Joy is one of 13 members who are charged with reviewing programs and activities for older adults and making program recommendations to the Maryland Secretary of Aging. From 1988 to 1993, Joy was an associate in the law offices of Gordon, Feinblatt, Rothman, Hochberger, and Hollander. For 2 years prior to that, she served as a judicial law clerk for the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Finally, Joy is also a graduate of the University of Virginia Law School and is a member of the Bar Associations in Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. I will now invite you up.
Thank you.
All your successes.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And if anybody on the phone can't hear me, just indicate that I should speak up and I can get louder. If you want me to be quieter, I have a hard time doing that. So as Lauren indicated, I work for the Maryland Insurance Administration. And for those of you that have never heard of that agency, we are the agency that is responsible for regulating insurance companies and those individuals that do the business of insurance in the state of Maryland. So we're regulated. We make sure that insurance companies and insurance agents, the products that they sell to you are in accordance with Maryland law. We make sure that the amount that they charge you is in accordance with Maryland law. And then if you have issues or concerns about insurance companies, we're the state agency that you can come to for free, and we can assist you with that. And we do that for all lines of insurance: automobile, homeowners, life insurance, health insurance, disability. Basically, if it's an insurance product sold in the state of Maryland, we are able to assist with that. Now, we can't assist with Medicaid because that's another state agency, and we can't assist with Medicare. That's the federal government. But other than that, even if we can't assist, we can try to help you figure out which agency you should go to. And my unit, our primary purpose is to make sure that before something bad happens, you understand your insurance costs. And this month is, as Lauren indicated, financial literacy month. But this month also is flood preparedness. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit, and I've got some slides, but I can tell you I veer off of those because I try to really talk about the things that consumers ask me about and the things that I think will assist you. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and ask it as I'm going, because if you wait until the end, I'm old and I will forget. So let's have a conversation. It's a beautiful day. There's so many other places you could be. You decided to either be here or listen in, so let's make it worth your while. So next slide, please. So this just talks about what I'm going to cover today. And as you see, I'm going to really focus on automobile insurance, homeowners insurance, water damage, and flood, because those are the four primary things that impact you as consumers. Next slide. And so this is what I just talked about, who we are and what we do. And for those of you that decided not to come, you missed out. because there are lots of goods on the back table, including a lamp. So if you had actually just come here, you would have been able to get a few other goodies, but that's okay. So next slide. All right. This is where we're going to start. Your automobile, because most people, they don't think about damage to your automobile when it comes to disasters. Well, there are different things that can happen to your automobile, and by having the appropriate coverage, you can make sure that your automobile will be replaced. So you're going to hear people say full coverage. And yes, full coverage does cost a bit more. But let me explain why an individual needs full coverage. So first of all, when you first buy that vehicle, when you got a loan, the lender is going to say you need full coverage. But once you pay that loan, in the state of Maryland, the only thing you're required to have is coverage to protect someone that you do damage to their vehicle. So that's called liability coverage. But Maryland law doesn't require that you have coverage to protect your vehicle. In order to protect your vehicle, you need full coverage. So, for example, what happened to me a few weeks ago when I was going to do a presentation in Cecil County. And I swear I didn't hit the deer that deer hit me. If I had not had full coverage on my vehicle, the damage to my vehicle would have been my responsibility. Because there weren't any other cars involved. It was just me and that darn deer. So if I can't afford to repair or replace my vehicle, I need to have full coverage. Does that make sense? So think about it this way. If you have a car and that's the only way you can get back and forth to work, and you have an accident, is it worth it to you to have full coverage? And that's what I tell people to think about. The other thing you need to think about is what your deductible is on your automobile. So let's say my cause a regular auto accident, and I got full coverage, and that's great. But my deductible, because remember this, the higher the deductible, the lower the premium. And everybody, I can pay that too. I don't want to pay this much of premium. Everybody complains about, so we're looking for ways to bring that premium in. So I say I want to bring my premium down, so give me a $2,000 automobile deductible. That means I need to come out of pocket with $2,000 before the repair shop will repair my car. So, and if you can do that, that's great. But we don't plan when you're going to be in an accident. So the question is, if something bad were to happen today, how much cash can you pay today? And that's what you need to think about. And people will say, well, I'll just send them a charge. And that's fine. But then remember, if you don't pay that charge card on, you got to pay interest. So those are all practical things that you need to think about. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. If you have motorcycle, they put it into video. So some companies Not all companies will sell you a motorcycle policy. Ask your insurance company if they even sell those policies. But a lot of companies, they will have one policy for an auto and one policy for a motorcycle. And some companies will insure your vehicle, but decide, too risky for the motorcycle. We don't want that risk. And that's based off of underwriting guidelines. All insurance companies have, it's basically the rules of what kinds of risks they have an appetite for. That's all insurance is. It's basically how much appetite does the insurance company have for a particular risk. And so they look at lots of factors. They look at you, they look at what you're driving or riding, and then they also look at where you are. So people in certain jurisdictions may end up paying more or less because either there are more accidents or they are doing a higher chance of the vehicle being stolen. So all of those, a bunch of people that are really smart, called actuaries, look at that to determine how much to charge for a particular risk. Does that answer your question? So this just tells you a little bit also about damage to your vehicle. Let me give you a couple of examples of things that have happened. So let's say, I don't know, this now has been probably 10 years ago. In the city of Baltimore, there was a place, it was on Charles Street, where the street caved in. And people were calling and screaming, my insurance company won't pay my claim. The reason for that was they did not have full coverage. And some insurance companies call it an active guard. It's basically, there's no liability. Basically, the street just caved in. Now, if they had full coverage, there would have been some payment for the damage to the vehicle. Okay, next slide. And this is an important one. So when you have been in medicine and the insurance company is looking at, well, your vehicle is no longer driving, and we're going to deem it a total loss. What does that mean? The law says that if the damage to the vehicle is more than 75% of what the vehicle is worth, they have to declare it a total loss. And I've heard consumers complain on both ends. Sometimes people don't want their car deemed a total loss, and the insurance company has no choice because the law says they must. Sometimes people, when it's not 75%, they want the insurance company to deem it a total loss so that they can get another vehicle, either because they don't trust it or for whatever reason. But the law is very specific as to when a vehicle must be deemed a total loss. And if you're ever in that situation and you need help understanding it, just reach out to us and we can explain, to basically tell you whether the insurance company is doing is in accordance with Maryland law, or we'll get in touch with them and say, wait a second, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Next slide. And this goes over the point about 75%. Next slide. Just now, if your vehicle is deemed a total loss, you do have the right to keep the vehicle. But MBA requires that the vehicle be tagged a salvage vehicle. which basically means that you've decided to keep it, but it's been in a major accident, and if you get ready to sell it, the next person knows it's been in a major accident. Insurance companies don't have any choice over this either. This is the MBA telling them this is what they must do. Next slide.
Question for you.
Uh-huh.
Can an insurance company raise your rates or actually refuse to provide coverage when they salvage vehicle?
So if it's a part of their underwriting guidelines, I don't ever know of a situation where that's happened, but if in their underwriting guidelines, it specifically says, we will not insure salvage vehicles, that could be the case. But if that ever happens, I would tell the person, file a complaint with us, let us pull the underwriting guidelines and see if that's exactly. Because just because they say it so, doesn't mean that's what they have to follow. So before I switch to homeowners, any other questions about auto? And if you don't have any right now, you can always ask, me. Okay. So, but before I move to homeowners, if you know anyone that rents, if you have college students that are either on campus or off campus, they need to make sure that their personal property is protected. Sometimes their personal property will be protected under a parent's homeowner's insurance, but sometimes it is not. And they will need a renter's insurance policy. And so people think, well, they're a college student. They don't have that much. How much electronic stuff do they have? They got an iPhone, they got an iPhone, they got an iPad, they got a laptop. All that stuff adds up pretty darn quick. Renter's insurance is not that expensive. And even if they are the safest and most conscientious person in the world, is their roommate or their neighbor. How many times has the next door neighbor left the stove on and caused a fire in the next door neighbor's apartment, which caused the sprinkler to go off and damage the other person's property? I tell everybody, renter's insurance is probably one of the best investments. People used to think that when we have fire, the Red Cross is gonna come and save me. The county is gonna come and save me. The state is gonna come and save me. Basically, renter's insurance, $15 to $30 a month. Price of a very inexpensive lunch, and you're protected. So that's my message for renter's insurance. Homeowner's insurance. When you think about it, your home is probably, for most people, the largest investment that you have. You spent years saving up to buy one. You spent years making additions to the home, buying the furniture, buying the big television, all that good stuff. And in probably 2 minutes, reading the insurance policy. And when they send you what I call the little love notes every year, telling you about the changes to your insurance policy, most people, they put them in the circular folder You know what the survey is? The trash fee. And then when something bad happens, they call me, Joy, my policy won't cover. And I'm like, okay, so wait a second. Let's look at the declaration page. The who? That's the thing you gotta get every year. So let's look at it. Let's look at it. So they say, well, first let me find it. And once I find it, I'll call you back. I'll call you back. So they find it. And some people admit, oh, when I got this, all I saw was how much I owed and I never read it. So they didn't read that their deductible was no longer a flat deductible. It was now a percentage of how much they had their home insured for. And I can tell you there have been people, and no offense to gentlemen, but I've had grown men cry when they told me my deductible is $10,000. Where in the heck am I going to get that? Because they now had a percentage deductible and didn't know that. Or it's women who say, well, my jewelry is worth $20,000, but somebody's telling me I only have $1,000 worth of coverage. Yeah. And it's not per piece, it's for all of it. Or I just had 5 trees fall on my house. I got an estimate and it's gonna cost me $10,000. And my insurance company's telling me I only have $500 worth of coverage. Yes. Did you read your declaration page? So if you don't take anything else from this, go out and when you get home, find that one document called a declaration page. Pull it out, even if you have to open the envelope that you've never opened before. And the first thing you need to look for is make sure they've got the right address on your policy. And you probably say, oh, they have the right address. Not necessarily so. So you look at that, and then this is not your policy. This is just a summary. It's going to tell you what's covered and how much is covered. Pay attention to that. And if there's something that's that you don't understand or you have questions about, pick up the phone and call your agent or your insurance company. And if they tell you, don't worry about that, it's okay. Say, no, I want an answer. And if they say, well, I can't answer that, well, you can either find the answer and call me back or let me speak with your supervisor. Because remember, you are paying them. They're not paying you. You are paying them. So you have rights under the terms of your insurance policy. And you don't want to be the one that calls me and I have to say, I'm real sorry to tell you, you don't have coverage for X, Y, and Z. And the big thing is, there may be things that you don't have coverage for, but you plan and you set aside the money so that when you got that $10,000 that you need to have trees removed, you have money to take care of that. Now, this is a side thing. Trees, we love them, but please, after every wind event, walk your property, cut back those limbs. If you see trees that are beginning to die, either remove them or cut them back, because we've seen it happen. Trees falling on homes and people are injured or even worse. And more importantly, you said something about what insurance companies will and won't cover. So under Maryland law, an insurance company can't cancel you for less than 3 disaster claims. However, they can raise your premium. So if you've not taken steps and you allow that tree to damage your home and you put in a claim, you could end up, because of an increase in premium, paying for that over the long run. So you're much better off just cutting those trees back and walking the property. That's just from somebody who knows. And I'll leave it at that. So these are basically the types of things that you should be thinking about when it comes to your homeowner's policy. Windstorm damage, debris or tree removal. Let's spend a minute on water sewer. So we've all heard the stories about all of a sudden that wonderful stuff backs up through a drain that normally takes the stuff out of the house. But that's the whole thing, it backs up. That's called water sewer backup coverage. You don't have that automatically. You have to pay an additional premium for that. And the amount of coverage is you get to select. Insurance companies can offer as little as $5,000 worth of coverage. They must offer you the amount of coverage that you have in your home. So let's say you got your home insured for $300,000. They have to offer you water sewer backup coverage in the amount of $300,000. But you are going to pay an additional premium for that. So people frequently ask me, well, how much water sewer backup coverage should I get? And this is what I tell them. If you have raw sewage that backs up into your home, how much is it going to cost you to get that cleaned up and to replace those items? And based on that, that's the figure that I would generally look at when it comes to water sewer backup coverage. Yes, sir.
How does this compare, what's the difference between this and the national flood insurance?
And I'll go ahead and cover that now. I'm just going to cover it again. Let me cover it now. Okay. So this water sewer backup coverage is when something, a drain, your washing machine or commode, something that normally takes stuff out, a pipe or won't, actually instead it backs up into your home. Flooding, that's when water seeps from the ground into your home. So either because of heavy rain or because overflow from a stream, that's considered flooding. And flooding is never, ever, ever covered under a homeowner's policy. You have to buy either through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, or some companies actually sell a flood policy. Now, in some of these major storms, two things can happen at once. We have heavy rain. And because of that, water is seeping in. You also may have a sump pump that can't keep up with the water. And you also may have water sewage backup that comes through. If you have more than one event, two events
that happen at the same time. You've got the sewage coming out and you've got the water flowing in. That's something called concurrent causation. You've got one thing that is never covered under your homeowner's policy, that's the flood and the water sewer factor. If you have concurrent causation, your insurance policy says not going to cover. Because there's basically what takes precedent is the uncovered, the thing that's not covered. And so what ends up happening frequently there is that we'll end up getting engineers, not we, but the homeowner and the insurance company get engineers involved to determine what was the cause of the damage. It's not pleasant. The concurrent causation is a big issue. Additional living expenses. That's if fire or a covered loss. If you have that and that's the reason, for that reason you can't stay in your home, the insurance company will pay additional living expenses for you to go someplace else. But here's the key, additional living, it's additional. You got to still pay your mortgage. You will, let's say you normally, if you were at home, you spend $500 a month on groceries. But you're in a hotel and you don't have a kitchen in the hotel, so you're forced to go out. And so now you're spending $1,000 on meals. You get that additional $500, not the whole 1,000. So this is what insurance companies normally do. They put you in a hotel kitchen. So you can, if you normally live off of $500, you still should be able to live off of $500 because you can cook, you buy your food just like you did when you were in your home. So it has to be over and above what you would normally spend. Okay? Next slide.
Real quick, with the windstorm damage,
Mm-hmm.
tell you that it's here in the county, we have several instances where we go out to help to create a small roof. Bad windstorm happened, and before we leave, guy pulls up the truck and says, "Oh, hey, God, I know, I can take care of this for you for whatever." We tell people all the time, get in touch with your insurance firms, because a lot of people pay for it, but they only pay up to a certain amount.
Exactly.
Those guys go with that, and they'll, so then you're left on the hook for.
And that's an excellent point. After many of these events, and for the large events, it's even worse because they come from out of state. And so some of them are licensed, and don't get me wrong. Everybody's got to make a living. But we have seen a number of consumers taken advantage of. Either they tell you, well, if you get, I need $500 so I can secure your place in line. You go ahead and give me that money now, and then you never see the person again. So be careful when you're dealing with tree removal, contractor, or anything. Also, this is the more important point. Before you do anything, it's going to come up on one of these later slides. Your insurance company, under the terms of your policy, has an absolute right to examine the damage as is. Now, sometimes they're going to say to you, don't worry about it. We don't need to see it, but make sure you get that from them in writing. Do not throw anything away until the insurance company says it's okay. And this is what ends up happening, especially after some of our larger events, the county will have dumpsters and all that good stuff, and that's great. But then you start throwing stuff away and the insurance company says, well, how do I know you actually have it? Or people will throw away their clothes and they're like, well, they got wet. Well, they were a pair of jeans. Jeans get wet every time you wash them. Just because something is wet doesn't mean it should be thrown away, because it can be clean. And if you throw them away, that's another reason for the insurance company not to pay the claim. Remember, you've got rights under your policy, but you also have obligations.
I don't know if it's covered in your homeowners or if it's fire damage. Also, and new thing is for us older folks, and we're all familiar with ambulance chaser lawyers that would show up and say, "You gotta take it to the police." But we now, when there's a fire, we now have these board up show up. You can say, we can put a piece of wood over the roof. We can board up a box. And your insurance will cover it. Your insurance will cover it. It's protecting your property. We tell people all the time, before you speak to that guy, before you sign it from him, call your insurance, speak to him, and see what, yes, you're gonna need somebody to cover up that whole roof, to cover up the windows or whatever. But make sure it's covered under your homeowners, talk to your insurance agent. Because literally, we're still rolling up the fire. These guys are coming down the street going, where's the homeowner? I'm here for that insurance company. So they.
And I've even seen instances where the person was injured and that person shows up at the hospital. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Just sign right here.
Yeah. We got it.
We're here on.
And because not all insurance companies are equal. If you have a problem getting an insurance company after an event to call you back, get in touch with us. Because we have the phone numbers, not just for Joe Blow around the corner, we've got phone numbers for everybody. So we can reach out to them and say, your policyholder's been calling you. We expect a call in 2 hours. Because remember, we're the regular.
So in the world of today, do you think it's still better than nothing, basically,
Now, some insurance companies will say, we're going to send a drone out. If they say they're going to do that, that's fine. Some insurance companies will say, well, you go ahead and take the pictures and send them to us. But they have the right to say, not good enough, we want a personal inspection. That's purely under the terms of your policy. I've had consumers say to me, well, I've got all this damage to the inside of my house, but I refuse to let the insurance company in. Oh, well, that's your choice. You don't have to, but also you will not get your claim paid.
is there a way to sustain liability, basically cover that?
Not if, and we really found this after COVID. Insurance companies were not coming in. And also for them, it might not be cost effective. So it's not like you can say, I refuse to accept these photos. Now, if you've got a reason to believe that they're missing something, then you can get in touch with us and we can sort of figure that out. But as a general rule, you can't require that they do a personal inspection. And that's one of the things that I tell people. Develop that relationship with your agent and your company before the claim. And that way, you understand what your rights and your obligations are before you need them. The first time you encounter or have an encounter with an insurance company, you don't want it to be when you're screaming at them to pay your claim. Also, be mindful of this. You get more with sugar and honey than you do And don't, I can be mean and I can be nasty, but if the first conversation is blah, 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 the insurance company, remember, they take notes and keep notes. So that's all in your file. The consumer berated me, called me everything but a child of God. And then when we demand to see the notes, because we're gonna ask them, and we see this, and like, oh, well, okay.
So it's not.
Yeah. And sometimes what ends up happening is that same person that's been extremely nasty to the insurance company is extremely nasty to my employees. And I'm like, and you want us to help you? Wow. I get you're having a really bad day. All of us do that. But after I've told you 4 times to stop yelling at me and you just raise your voice, maybe we need to move you to somebody else.
So you talked about developing a good relationship with your insurance people. So how do you go about doing that?
One of the things that you can do, first of all, when you're selecting, I also get asked, how do I find a good insurance agent? Talk to your coworkers and friends about the company that they've used. And also ask them if they've had a claim with that company. Because the company will be as nice to you as the moon is bright if they're just taking money. But when you have a claim, do they help you? Or do they say, don't worry about it, sweetie? So that's how you find a good. And then basically talking to them, we encourage people, and I know you might listen to this, do a yearly review of your policy. When you get that declaration page, if there's something that's new or you don't understand, ask them that. I don't need you to apply small, no, but just express an interest. Because if they know you're interested, they're more likely to be interested in you as a policy. Next slide. So declaration date. This is just a sample of what one looks like, but you see at the very top where your objectives, all the different coverages and how much the coverages are. That is really important that you understand that and right size the policy. Next slide. And then these are just some questions that you should ask. And one of the big things that people have questions about is there's 2 types of policies, an actual cash value policy and a replacement cost policy. Actual cash value policies are cheaper, but this is what that means. Let's say last year, well, 5 years ago, I bought this chair. And at the time I purchased it, if I paid $100 for it, if I have an actual cash value policy and this chair is destroyed in my mind, the insurance company will pay for the chair, but they're going to subtract how much the chair has depreciated in value. So you're not going to get what the chair that you paid for. You're only going to get what it's worth today. And that's going to be significantly less. If you have a replacement cost policy, same sort of thing, $100 for it, and 5 years, the insurance company will pay you to replace it. But here's the key. You actually have to give proof that you actually replaced it. So they're going to want to see the receipt for the cost of new. Now, let's talk about, you're allowed to replace with lifetime quality. So if I've got a 32-inch color television, I'm not allowed to replace it with a 48-inch mega whatever. I get a 32-inch color television. That's it. Okay, lifetime cost.
Is there a time limit? Let's say that your house is totally destroyed. You're not gonna buy furniture for it until the house is rebuilt. So.
So what ends up happening is you'll put in your claim, and you need to do that timely. And what they'll do is they will just wait. They may give you the actual cash value initially, so you can start replacing items. And then as you actually replace them and you give them receipts, then they'll continue, just you show them the receipts and they'll continue to pay. But remember this, you're only going to get your policy limits. So let's say the stuff in your home is worth $500,000, but your policy, in accordance with your declaration page, only shows that you have $250,000 worth of personal property coverage. All they're going to pay you is $250,000. Even if, and you could show them, you've got your seats and everything else. That's not the policy you purchased.
On that same note, I know of situations that happen in the county where homeowners have called us back and help saying, when they had a fire, the house still demolished. And the insurance company won't let us check the house. But what they're doing is, the insurance company works for the builder who's rebuilding. They pay them back in the phone.
They give them draws.
They give them draws, right? But put the loan out, that's the.
Mm-hmm.
We had this double, it's free to be, but they want that money in their bank, and it's not in yours, so.
And remember this also, because sometimes that same situation and you still have a mortgage. Why is the insurance company writing the check to both me and the lender? Because most of the house belongs to the lender. You have a mortgage. So they are required. Your insurance policy tells them they must. And if they don't, they're going to be in big trouble.
Let's say they touch on. Lump sum. Is that?
You're asking me a tax question? I'm not a tax attorney, so I don't know. I mean, I know there are exceptions and stuff, but I don't know the answer to that.
I can tell you while we're in the tax thing, that a lot of times when we go out and we have a building that's damaged by fire or whatever, we have a process that we work with inspections, license, and permits. But we'll post the building concerns, can't live here, it's something, what we're doing. And we send that information, and that's money, or that information goes to the state. You don't have to pay county taxes or state taxes on that property while you be living. And so when people get upset, why are you posting my building and telling me I can't live in my house? It's like, oh, it's for your benefit, because you're not going to be paying property tax on the property that you can't live in until permits are filed for it and then you get these filings. So we talk about taxes.
Yeah.
Some people get, behind that red car up the front door and you get.
You're trying to help. Hmm. So here's the deal. If you or another one of the policyholders is the one that caused the damage, generally speaking, you're not going to be able to file an insurance claim. Now, what we also have seen is if husband and estranged wife are having a dispute and the husband is the one that causes the problem, then sometimes depending on
once there's been a full investigation, sometimes we have been that the insurance company will pay. But generally speaking, if you've done something that has caused the loss, insurance will not pay.
Else.
Now, if somebody else, then once that investigation is over, generally the insurance company will pay. But that, yeah. The insurance company, it's called subrogation. So what the insurance company, but usually that person doesn't have anything. But what the insurance company will do is they'll pay you, but then they will get their attorneys to go after that person. But you reminded me of something. Remember I was talking about how much I love trees? My tree falls on her house. Whose insurance has to pay? Hers.
And hers go get that.
And in those cases, the only way that I might be responsible is if I knew my old ratty tree was gonna fall on her house and I didn't do a darn thing about it. So I have seen trees ruin tons of relationships with neighbors. I have seen trees cause disputes between mild-mannered consumers and local officials. It's just, I love trees, don't get me wrong, but they do a lot of damage. And they're not cheap.
We've seen that a lot. Where people call and say, there's a tree risking falling on the house. We go out and say, oh, yeah, looks like it's going to be happen. And they say, give me the report number. I'm going to get the report. I'm going to get a cop, and I'm going to give it to the neighbor and see. That's what it is. It's proof that.
Right, that the tree was ready. Yeah. Yeah.
That happens a lot.
I mean, it's, and tree removal is not cheap. It's not. So when we first buy our homes, we have a basic home, but then later on we decide to put on the deck. We put in wood floors, we do all kinds of cabinets, we do upgrades. To do those upgrades, you need to notify the insurance. Why? Because if you have a claim and you haven't notified the insurance company and they haven't raised how much your property is insured for, you're not going to get those new upgrades paid. And then the last bullet is, remember I said that there are limits? Make sure you've got adequate coverage for your antiques, your collectibles, your jewelry, or your computers, because all of those things have limits as well. Next slide. And this, I went over this, the actual cash value versus replacement cost. Next slide. Okay. These things, and the primary thing you need to think about here is the last one, floods. Homeowners insurance does not cover flooding. So you need to think about whether where I live, there's a chance that my home might flood. And if so, you need to consider getting flood insurance.
We have a question online.
Okay.
So our question is there an existing situation about Marylanders using VA auto registrations because they may not have the same insurance requirements, such as the need for auto insurance? Is this true? And if so, what is the Maryland strategy to combat it?
So if you are a resident of the state of Maryland, you must have your vehicle registered in the state of Maryland. Period, no stop. Now, there's a period of time where people just moved here. I want to say it's 30 or 60 days. I'm not sure. You have to go to the NVA's site. But if you don't have the vehicle registered and insured here, and you get pulled over, the MVA will fine you. And the amount of the fine, it ain't cheap. And there is nothing that the Maryland Insurance Administration can do to release or remove that fine. So bottom line, you live here, you gotta have any, state's gonna get its money. So you gotta be both. Your vehicle's gotta be registered here and insured. And yes, Maryland's requirements are more stringent. It's just facts.
The MBA frequently does insurance sweeps in a lot of different neighborhoods to track out.
But there are certain people who don't all have to be military.
Yeah, there are certain there are exceptions, and what they are, I don't know. Only, that's MBA and the VA, they do all of that stuff. But- Next slide. Okay. Well, we talked about. Let's go over to one, water versus flood. Okay, so we talked about the slope. Your homeowner's policy covers certain water levels. If there is a pipe that bursts suddenly and accidentally, generally speaking, that's considered water damage. That's covered by your homeowner's policy. But notice the two words that I use, suddenly and accidentally. If you've got a slow leak, even if it's a pinhole leak behind the refrigerator, that's not sudden. In order for it to be accidental, if we're didn't have it this year, but had one of those horrible cold winters, and you decide to go to Florida, and you don't want to pay the electric company, and you turn your heat down, and your pipe freeze and burst, that's not accidental. You intentionally chose to decrease the amount of heat. Oh, Joy, how in the world would they know that? Okay. They're gonna pull and tell you, give me your electric bills for a similar time. And if normally you pay $300 a month in electric bills, and now all of a sudden you're paying $50, there's a hint. Next slide. Oh, one more thing with that. So pipers, they pay for the items that are damaged. They don't pay for replacement of the pipe. That is considered upkeep, not covered under your insurance policy. And we'll go talk for 1 minute. Roofs are a major source of issues. A roof does not last forever. There are times when you must get your roof replaced or repaired. If you've never had anything done to your roof, and all of a sudden there's a heavy rain and you notice my roof is leaking, that's the time they're going to send somebody out to look at that roof. Or they're going to ask you, when was the last time you had some work done to your roof? And if the answer is never, that's irritating. We're not paying. So your homeowner's policy is not a home maintenance policy. It is if there is a peril that has destroyed something. Same thing on the roofs. If you have one of those heavy storms and the wind takes 5 or 6 shingles off, you're not getting a new roof. They can find the shingles on the ground. Take somebody to come nail them up. If they can't find the shingles, they're gonna go out and buy those soft shingles. And that's it. Siding is the same thing. You have to have a big windstorm. And it blows some of the siding off your house, bends it up. And you're like, oh, you need to replace all of my siding. Oh, no. Oh, no. They are only required to repair or replace the siding that's actually damaged. But then it's gonna be, it's not gonna be, just, not the insurance company. Now, there's some companies that will sell you for an additional cost. Matching on policy that requires that it match. But that costs additional money. So just be aware. Now, if you've got a particular sign that they can't find and the size is odd, sometimes they will cover the whole thing. But years ago, they was low. These days, next slide. And so this talks about what a flood is. So once again, these are the things that are not covered under your homeowner's policy. Next slide. We've already talked about the water sewer backup and what's required by the insurance. Next slide. This is the information about the bursting pipes. Next one. And then, so not easy. This is a good way to remember. Rain comes from the sky, and as long as you've got a decent roof, and the rain, because some of the shingles have been blown off and it comes in your house, that kind of water damage is generally covered. If it rains really heavily and the water seeps from the ground, that's a flood, not covered under your homeowners. Okay? Next slide. And then this tells you where you can get flood insurance. Next slide. And this is the contact information. So I know I've covered lots and lots of stuff. On the back table, I've got this natural disaster brochure, a little black brochure that talks about who we are, how we can help, a bookmark, and then the little lanterns. So if you're still awake, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes, sir.
So what about the, Stacy, condo?
So, and his question is, for those on the phone, condominiums. So condominiums, anybody who's condominium, you know that you've got two types of policies. A master policy that covers all of the shared things, outside walls, ground, blah, blah, blah. For the unit owners, you also have to have a policy to cover your stuff and your betterments. So let's say the condo itself, it was fine, but you wanted better floors, you wanted mobile. Those things are considered betterments, and so that's under your condo policy. The biggest issue that we seem to have with condominiums is that you want the master policy to pay a claim. And you get pushback from the board saying, we don't want to borrow that claim because it's going to cause the premiums to increase. You, as a owner of a condominium, absolutely have the right to have that claim filed. And if you ever, we, as an insurance administrator, don't have jurisdiction over the condominium associations. I tell people Howard County's got a great consumer protection division. It is excellent. Yes, sir.
We've had fires in England where the people that rivers and streets and property in your business. Yes, you do. It was part of your monthly. And they had up to a certain amount of money or whatever. So I know some people don't know that. Sometimes they do.
And not all apartment management companies are as good as others. Some of them actually buy true renters insurance for their folks. Some of them just get these policies that only protect the management company. And so, but the question to ask is, if there's any kind of an event, talk to the management company and see what's there. But you're exactly right that, yeah. I mean, and they include it as a part of the rental fee. Does anybody else have any questions? Do you have a question? Any questions on the phone?
Not seeing any.
I'll give you guys another couple minutes. I know you want to get outside. All right, well, thank you all. And as I said, if other questions occur to you, feel free. We've got people all day, every day that are at the MIA and they'll answer your questions a lot better than I can. Have a great afternoon.
All right, thank you everyone for joining online, and thank you all for everyone who came in person. Like I mentioned earlier, if y'all could sign in at the back, if you haven't already on your way out. Also, I want to draw your attention to this last slide. If you'd like to attend our quarterly meetings like this, you can scan this QR code up on the screen, and it'll take you to our sign up for our mailing list, or you can use the link. And then you can, of course, like get notifications for when these meetings happen, and also any other emergency preparedness events we're having. We usually put those out on that list as well. And our next meeting will be in July, and we will have the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services, or RACES, presenting. Yeah, I've got a couple members here. So that will be very interesting. I believe they'll also have some sort of hands-on training or demo or something like that. All right, well, thank you all for joining. I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you all online. Mm.